Have you ever heard of banshee? I haven't, but I know lots of people who have. One of them was Jamie McIntyre, a young man who enjoyed a bit of crack. He liked the girls, he loved dancing, and he didn't mind a few drinks as well. He was coming home one night from a dance in Portrush and they headed home towards Glenravel. On the way, he passed a big estate, and sitting on the wall outside was a beautiful young woman. Oh, she took his breath away. She was dressed in a shimmery green silk dress, and her hair was the colour of corn, and she was combing it. It was shimmering and shining in the moonlight. And as he watched, she put the comb down beside her on the wall. She didn't speak, and neither did Jamie. But as he passed, thinking to tease her, he picked up the comb and took it with him. That was a mistake. Behind him, he heard a yowl, a screech, a wail that rose in a crescendo until it would have curdled your blood. And he looked over his shoulder and he saw behind him not the beautiful young woman that he had seen sitting on the wall, but an old crone wearing a grey cobwebby dress with long grey hair that hung down over her face, and a wicked face it was too. And she was making to come after him. Well, Jamie took to his heels and fear gave him wings. And when he glanced over, still she was coming, and he glanced over his shoulder, she seemed to be gliding along the ground and gaining on him. Fortunately, he wasn't too far from his home. And as he raced up the loaning and flung himself in the door and shoved the iron bolt, he could hear the wailing and the rattling and the howling behind him outside, and Jamie fell in a faint on the floor. His mother came down the stairs. "Jamie," she said, "what kind of mischief have you been up to now? What kind of trouble are you bringing in this house?" Jamie couldn't even speak. But his mother was a very wise woman. And when she looked and saw the comb lying on the floor, because Jamie hadn't had the wit to throw it from him, and heard the howling and the wailing outside, she knew exactly what had happened. She picked up the tongs from the hearth and slid the comb out under the door. And as she did so, there was a crack and a flash. And when she drew the tongs back in again, they were snapped clean in two. The wailing and the crying faded and disappeared back down the path and away into the distance. Jamie began to come to himself, and his mother said, "Listen, Jamie, let you learn your lesson from this. If that had been your arm or my arm that went out under that door, it would have been clean cut in two now. But I use the iron tongs because, as everybody knows, iron is a protection against the fairies." That was the banshee. Never you bother the banshee again, because if you don't trouble her, she won't trouble you. But you took her comb. Never you trouble her again. And from that day on, Jamie took a different way home. He didn't come that road again. I won't say that he stopped going out and enjoying himself, because he still went out and enjoyed the crack. But he was careful about coming home. And he was careful, if he saw a comb lying on the roadside, never, ever to pick it up.